going on, all you wonderful A-plusers out there? It is I, Stuart, here once again to give you guys another Kamen Rider Saber review. This time we are going to be talking about episode 17. If you guys remember from my last week's review of Kamen Rider Saber, it definitely feels like the show has kind of been going downhill, which sucks because I feel like the show was finally finding its footing, essentially. It was finally becoming the Kamen Rider show I knew it could be from the start. But then, right as it really hit its peak, it just went right downhill again. It reminds me in a lot of ways of Titan Season 2. When you look at kind of Titan Season 1 all the way up to like maybe the first episode of Season 2, it all was just kind of like a big pile of mess. But then I feel like episode 2 of Season 2 was when they figured out what kind of show they wanted to be, and by the time it really got great, it sunk right back downhill again, and that's what it feels like they're doing with Saber. But luckily with episode 17, there were some things that I actually really did enjoy about this. With all that in mind, let's definitely get right into this. So in the beginning of the episode, we find out that Yuri, who was the sword from the previous episode that saved Touma from his friends that tried to betray him, we find out that he actually hasn't been on Earth in over 1,000 years. So he uses Touma's library or bookstore, whatever it is, in order to kind of catch up on all the knowledge that he's missed in the past 1,000 years or so. But apparently he has really bad manners about it because he leaves Touma's place as a giant mess and doesn't seem to even bother picking up after himself. I mean, the place gets cleaned later on, but there's nothing to really imply that Yuri was the one to clean it up. Well, another thing that kind of gets revealed in this scene is that Touma has kind of given up all motivation when it comes to writing his book. The book that he mentioned he was writing a few episodes ago about his adventures with his friends. It seems like he's kind of given up on that. And as a writer myself, I totally feel that. There are days where when you're just in a bad mood or you're just not in the right mindset, it does become a huge challenge to find the motivation to continue to write. So I totally get where Touma's at right now. We finally get to see the South Pole base, and it's literally the exact same set as the base they use for the North Pole, but with different lighting to imply that there might be some shady stuff going on. Get it? Rintaro seems to be the only one of the writers with even a sprinkle of common sense, as he's the only one contemplating whether or not it was a smart idea to clash swords with Touma. Meanwhile, Ren just continues to whine and bitch and moan like a 5-year-old. The writers are then given an order from Rika to capture Touma and bring the Sword of Light to the Sword of Logos. Having missed so much in the world, Touma gives Yuri a tour of the city, and it's here that we get to see Yuri acting like a fish out of water. This leads to some really funny gags, such as him trying to blend in, but in doing so just ends up sticking out so much more. It's then that we get our monster of the week, and I don't know, is it just me, or does this thing kind of remind you of Norg from Operation Overdrive? Touma transforms into the Kamen Rider, and with his dragon motif being made of mostly fire, he almost wipes the floor with this snow monster. That is, until one of the villains decides to join in on the fight. It's here that we get the reveal that Caliber was really nothing but a pawn. He never really had that much purpose with the rest of the villains of the series. He was just being used essentially. After a pretty fast fight with the snow monster loses its form, and that's when Touma finds out that it's really the editor-in-chief, Mia's boss in other words. She transforms back into the snow monster, and Touma is worried about fighting back against it because destroying the monster might mean that they destroy the editor-in-chief. You know, in other words, destroying the monster might mean destroying the person it's taking control of. It's here that we get a style fight scene that I don't think we've really seen in this season yet. We get Touma trying to take down this monster with nothing but his bare fist. Yes, we get a hand-to-hand combat fight in this episode, and it is pretty entertaining, even though it doesn't go on for that long. Unfortunately, this doesn't really do much to the monster, and therefore Yuri is forced to join the fight. We see that Yuri does actually have a Kamen Rider form that isn't just a floating sword. We see that his shadow actually does make its own Kamen Rider form, and I do gotta give some props to the special effects on this, because it looks like what they might have done is a mixture of two things. Like, there are scenes where he looks like he's a completely computer generated character, and then other scenes that looks like they took a green suit and then just kind of keyed it out, but didn't key it out completely. Gave it more of a transparent appearance, but like also showing you that it's still there. Yuri nearly does destroy this monster, but Touma intervenes because of course destroying the monster means destroying the editor-in-chief, and of course that is wrong. And unfortunately, Yuri doesn't quite see Touma's point of view. Yuri just sees it as another monster. To him, the whole idea of it actually being another person doesn't seem to bother him. You know, whether or not he actually does feel guilt about what he's doing, it's really hard to say, because he's just going for what he thinks needs to be done. He thinks he needs to just destroy the monster and get it done with, where Touma is like, no, we can't do this. This is an actual person. We can't just destroy this person because it's the more convenient, easy answer. And yeah, I do agree with Touma in this case. This happens a lot in fictional media. You get innocent bystanders that are put in a situation where they become a danger to society. It happened in House of M, and it happens in a lot of other medias. There are times in these type of fictional stories where they become so powerful or so dangerous that yeah, there might not be another answer. Killing is never right, you know, that's a fact. But at the same time, sometimes you do have to make the wrong choice for the better good of mankind. This isn't one of those situations though. This is a monster of the week who has proven isn't that strong to begin with. So taking him down without killing him isn't really that much of an impossibility, especially if the other riders were around to do so. The only reason this monster is really having any effect at all is because it's just Touma fighting it on his own. If the other riders, you know, weren't such assholes in the previous episode, they could have easily taken this monster down, or hell, even Touma and Yuri just working together by themselves would have been enough to restrain this monster and prevent it from harming anyone else. But because Yuri doesn't see that point of view of Touma, it leads to the two of them clashing, and that's how we end our episode. I did like this discourse a lot more than the discourse from the previous episode. Yeah, there's no urgency as I was complaining about on the previous episode. However, at the very least, this is a guy that hasn't lived in our world for over 1,000 years, and he also doesn't have an attachment to Touma like Touma's friends did in the previous episode. So him disagreeing with Touma and totally being okay with clashing swords with him, it didn't bother me because they didn't have that connection. It wasn't like in the previous episode where these guys had a strong bond with Touma, and them not wanting to hear him out just made zero sense to me, especially because, like I mentioned, there was no urgency in their situation at the time. There was no reason they couldn't talk things out. Here, there is a genuine reason why the two of them aren't talking things out. They don't know each other. So I ended up really liking this episode a lot more than the previous, but at the same time, I'm still kind of sore about how the previous episode ended. So whether or not that goes away over time, we'll have to wait and see. But for now, it is a good episode on its own. It just sucks that it had to follow up one of my least favorite episodes of the series. But guys, at the end of the day, these are just my A+ opinions. We here at A+ Opinions always want to know what you guys think, so definitely let me know in the comments below if you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I did, or if you enjoyed it even more, or if you didn't like this episode at all. I definitely want to know. Also, for those of you who are interested in supporting our channel in other ways than just views, we do have a Patreon now. I have been reviewing Kamen Rider Ryuki and Kamen Rider Dragon Knight. You can catch my episode 1 review of Ryuki and Dragon Knight both on our Patreon currently. And by the end of Sunday, I will definitely have my review for Kamen Rider Ryuki episode 2 up, and then the week after that, it'll be Kamen Rider Dragon Knight episode 2. Essentially, I'm going to be going back and forth on the shows and kind of comparing the two, since they both use the same costumes, and of course, you know, Dragon Knight uses some of the footage in the fight scenes from Kamen Rider Ryuki. Both of them are really fun shows to watch if you guys ever want to check them out, and again, my reviews are on our Patreon if you guys are interested in helping support the channel. If not, no worries. Your viewership and subscriptions to our channel are also enough to really help us, and we do always appreciate any support you guys give us. But more important than subscribing to our channel and liking our videos, the most important thing to always remember is to always keep it A+.